think it's 1 minute past 1. People are still joining, but I think we can kick off. Daniela, thank you so much for leading this session.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much. I'm just trying to put the presentation. Just let me know when you can see it. So let's start our webinar. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daniela Fonseca. I am a byproduct valorization and management specialist at Food for Sustainability. I welcome all the members of the audience to the second series of Food for Sustainability webinars. Today we start with a session entitled Valorization of Endogenous Resources, What Treasures Your Region Hides. I want to take this opportunity to thank our three distinguished panelists for being here today with us, who I will introduce shortly, Ivo Oliveira, Joana Costa, and Mário Cristovão. Before we continue, I would like to present you the team that keeps the webinars running, Professor Claudia Costa, Operations Researcher, and my dear colleagues, Ana Rita, microbiologist, and Silvia, with a PhD in food technology. They are both part of the byproduct valorization team. Regarding today's webinars, questions are welcome, of course. If you have any questions, you can go to the Zoom chat and write them down. Just make sure you place the name of the speaker to which the question is addressed first. These questions will be answered at the end of the webinar. Rita will explain you how you can have your participation certificates. Rita?
Sure, Daniela, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So if you need an A certificate, please send an email with your name and title of the webinar to training@foodforsustainability.org. We will add this information in the chat. Go there and write down your email. Enjoy the session.
Thank you so much, Rita. And Silvia, can you please share with us where can the participants find more information about Food for Sustainability and its projects, please?
Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. If you want to know a little bit more about the Food for Sustainability projects, you just have to visit our website, foodforsustainability.org, and go to our project page where you can find our current work. You can also check our Academy webpage, in which you can navigate and exploit the content of past and future webinars and projects. Thank you. Enjoyed our session for today.
Thank you so much, Silvia. Before we start, let me just remind you that the duration of today's webinar will be approximately 1.5 hours. The session will be recorded and then it will be available to all those who are not be able to be with us live today for later viewing. If you do not wish to appear, I remind you that you should remain with your camera off. Now, let's start the webinar and contextualize the challenge with some facts. So, the European Green Deal aims to reduce the environmental and sustainable impact of the agri-food system. It aims also to strengthen resilience and food security to face climate change and the loss of agri-food biodiversity and lead a global transition to a clean, competitive economy that circulates from farm to fork, exploiting new opportunities and making the transition fair and inclusive for all. However, mainstream agricultural and food production is failing, nutrition and the environment. The current systems produce large quantities of food, but not enough of the required nutrient-rich, plant-based foods needed for healthier and sustainable diets. A study of global food supplies shows that the homogenization of global diets has a 70% decrease in variation between food supplies. For you to have an idea of what's happened with cereals, in more or less 60 years, diets worldwide have become increasingly similar, dominated by wheat, rice, and maize, at the expense of alternative staples such as sorghum or millet. This has also been happening with vegetables and fruits. So We started to use adjectives such as neglected, underutilized, local foods that are employed to define these species that have been marginalized by modern agricultural production and food systems. However, these underutilized plant species play an important role in diversifying diets, and they also hold an important nutrition potential. Although they are under research, reports usually find that they have a superior nutrition content compared with the crops currently dominating our food system. And also they hold the potential for nutritional security by combating hidden hunger caused by micronutrient deficiencies. These underutilized species also come with additional benefits. They are linked with biocultural heritage, they are adapted to marginal and difficult environments, and they contribute significantly to diversification and resilience of agroecological niches. This data further supports our conviction that a food system transformation is required to move beyond producing more foods towards finding ways to nourish everyone in ways that can be sustained environmentally, economically, and culturally. In this video, we will watch why the underutilized species are important.
The state of the world's agriculture affects you, me, and almost everyone else on the planet. We need to transform agriculture for good. Let me tell you why. Of the thousands of plants suitable for human consumption, only 4 major crops, maize, wheat, rice, and soybean, provide more than half of the world's food. We also use major food crops for fuel and animal feeds. Now think about our changing world. We are already experiencing climate change. The world population continues to grow. The planet is getting hotter. Will the major crops by themselves cope in hotter, drier conditions, withstand flooding, pests and diseases, and meet our increasing demand for food and energy? What are we doing to ensure a more sustainable world for future generations? We need a global action plan to transform agriculture for good. This must include neglected and underutilized crops that can diversify our food systems beyond just the world's major crops grown as monocultures. With a wider range of crops, agricultural diversification can contribute to improved incomes, food security and nutrition, provide cropping systems that are more resilient to climate change, and identify non-food crops for renewable energy. Transforming agriculture for good is a global effort.
Well, as you can see, the integration of these neglected species into production and consumption systems is highlighted here as a strategy and a way in which the economic, social, and environmental basis for future generations are not compromised. In this webinar, we will go into a journey in which we will talk about national cultivars and the approach to its valorization, focusing on almonds. We will give you an overview of the cultivar project and also on thistle to produce traditional cheese. Without further ado, let's welcome our first speaker, Ivo Oliveira. He is a postdoctoral research fellow at CITAB, the Center for Research and Agroenvironmental and Biological Technologies of UTAD. Ivo has a degree in biotechnological engineering, a master's degree in food quality and safety, and holds a PhD in biology. Right now, he is a postdoctoral research fellow at CITAB, and his research plan is the valorization of Portuguese almond cultivars, an integrated approach. This study includes an exhaustive characterization of almond cultivars from tree physiology to fruit quality, industrial aptitude, and byproduct valorization. In parallel, he collaborates on several projects with cherry, vine, and apple. Welcome, Ivo. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Daniela, for your kind presentation, and thank you for the invitation to be present at this webinar, and the possibility to talk about a little bit of our work regarding Portuguese almond cultivars. And following your presentation of these webinars, I think that this is an interesting subject to be shared with all of you. So this is a part of my postdoctoral project, which was 6 years. So I'm trying to condense 6 years of work in 10 or 15 minutes. So I apologize if I speak a little bit fast or if some informations are not quite as pormenorized as it should be, but I'm welcome to answer all your questions. So to start with this is a project that was planned because we noticed that our cultivars are being less and less used by almond producers, and we know that almond is one of the major dry fruits in the world, if not the major one. These are some data regarding almond production worldwide, and in Portugal we're not a big producer, but we are a major player in this market. We have one major issue, which is regarding almond orchard productivity. The world average is about 2 tons per acre, while we struggle to get above 600 kilograms per acre. These are the average values, of course. This data is from 2020. We are in 2022, so official data are probably being published in the coming months. Our area is mainly located in the north Portugal, but the Alentejo region is growing at an enormous rate, mainly due to the use of the Alqueva region. And already this data is from 2019. It's out of date. Probably they are now doubling their area of production with almond orchards, and are now the second major region in Portugal, and probably will surpass the north part of the country in the upcoming years. In Portugal, we have one protected geographical indication, Amêndoa Coberta de Moncorvo, which relies on Portuguese cultivars. We also have a protected denomination of origin, Amêndoa de Ouro, which includes 14 cultivars of almond, only Portuguese cultivars. We have in Portugal dozens of cultivars, and many more are probably unidentified or poorly identified, and their use is getting less use, not for their characteristics, because they are poorly studied, but because they are usually installed in poor soils, or the soils that the producers didn't want to put anything else there because they are poor soils, so they put almonds, which is a tree that produces almost anywhere. They in appropriate areas for almond. This is regarding soil characteristics, but also weather patterns, so chilling hours insufficient, or frosts, late frosts, which can lead to reductions in flowering and yields, and also inappropriate or outdated agricultural practices. Lack of studies are still missing, so the producers rely on foreign cultivars, which are very well characterized and that are available to be planted without problems. Just to let you know, these are some publications regarding almond and almond cultivars that show how many cultivars there are. These are, so in Algarve 20 or so cultivars that are described. If we go to Trás-os-Montes, the list is almost 50 or 60 or 70 cultivars. So, and many of them are almost unknown. What is known is the name. What is the interest of preservation of these Portuguese cultivars? It's a cultural heritage in tourist heritage. In Portugal, we travel to see flowering almonds. There are legends associated to almond production, but also from the genetic point of view, because the cultivars can be used just produce almond like any other cultivar, or to plant breeding to improve the characteristics that we want using the possible positive characteristics that these cultivars have. So what did we try to do in this project? Provide a physiological, biochemical, and quality evaluation of these cultivars using leaf gas exchange parameters, leaf-water relations, micromorphological characterization of leaves, biometrical and chemical characterization of fruits, studying their industrial aptitudes, the shelling percentage, which is a very important parameter to producers, the chemical and sensorial characteristics of almonds after processing, and we also try to valorize some of the co-products that are linked to almond production. So some results regarding leaf characteristics, we found out that leaves on Cultivar Bonita have a lower leaf area, which is an adaptation to areas with low water availability. They have increased stomatal density, cell wall, and leaf density. Xavier Casanova, a higher cuticle thickness, and Xavier Pegarinhos, epidermis and palisade parameter. These are all adaptation strategies to low water environments. When we studied leaf gas exchange, we also noticed that some of the Portuguese cultivars, namely Cultivar Pegarinhos, is able to keep photosynthetic parameters at a high level, even under water stress, and it compares very, very well with two foreign cultivars that was studied, Glorieta and Ferranhês. So the behavior of this Portuguese cultivar is similar to those foreign cultivars. These are the characterization of fruit characteristics, and namely weight of Portuguese almonds comparing to foreign almonds. These photos are at scale, so you can imagine the size of the almond of Sevilla Manduão. It's a very big almond, and in contrast, Sevilla Bonita is a very small almond. Looking at their weights, Manduão weighs almost the average 14 grams. However, the problem of this almond, it's of those 14 grams, almost 3/4 is of shell. So the kernel is not very big. Okay. However, some of our cultivars present similar values comparable to the foreign cultivars. Looking at some chemical characterizations, sugar content can be important, looking for consumer acceptability, but also from a processing point of view, show that some Portuguese cultivars are high content in sugar, namely Cultivar Manduão, but by the other hand, Cultivar Pegarinhos has a lower amount of sugar. These are data that it's important to know about, aiming to provide to these specific cultivars specific uses. If they are for processing, we have to keep attention what the sugar might react if we roast the almonds. If it's for fresh consumption, we need to look of how consumers will accept an almond with low sugar content or with high sugar content. If we look at vitamin E content, again, there are significant differences among cultivars. One Portuguese cultivar, Pegarinhos, you can see Pegarinhos Bom Corvo, Pegarinhos Mursa, is the same cultivar but collected in two different locations. They are the ones who present high vitamin E content, which is very interesting. On the other hand, one of the foreign cultivars that was used for comparison presents the lowest vitamin E content. Looking at the fatty acid profile, very important when processing almonds, but also from a human health point of view. The profile is very similar among cultivars. Over 77% of the fatty acids are linoleic and oleic, and this is what is usual in almonds. But one very interesting thing that we found out is for Cultivar Bonita, the presence of polyunsaturated fatty acid alpha-linolenic was 3.4 times higher than the average of record on the other cultivars. This is interesting because unsaturated fatty acids are linked to health benefits when included in the human diet. So this is a point that can be used to give some added value to this specific cultivar. These are some phenolic profile. Phenolics are associated to health benefits also. The total content was very high in two different cultivars, one foreign cultivar, Ferranhês, and one Portuguese cultivar, Molar. By the other hand, Cultivar Bonita presented a low amount of these compounds. the major phenolic was catechin, and it was the major one in all cultivars. The second major phenolic was not the same in all cultivars and varied depending on which one we were studying. When we also study the volatile compound, which is linked to sensory profile associated to one cultivar, and it's the compounds that can provide good or bad flavor to almonds when we are eating them. We found out that the Portuguese cultivars have higher amount of these compounds, so they are more aromatic, so to say. There are 5 chemical classes that were detected, and this is normal in all cultivars in this, what is described in other studies. What we did find out, it was interesting that the major compounds were not the same on every cultivar. So, Ferranhês, Goliath, and Molar presented alcohols as the major compounds. The remaining cultivars presented aldehydes with the major compounds. This is due probably to growth conditions, but also to storage conditions between the harvest and the time that I was getting the sample. So because aldehydes are usually associated to poor storage conditions. But we found out it's for amendoão, the major compound is hexanal, which is associated to green notes. For pegarinhos, bonita and casanova, benzaldehyde, which is linked to the flavor which we know as almond flavor, almond aroma, was the major one. In the remaining cultivars, the major compound was 3-methylbutanol, which is linked to black chocolate aroma. And although these are the main compounds, the sensibility that the human nose has to each compound is very different, and sometimes we cannot detect these compounds even if they are the major ones. When we did the sensory analysis to see how this how the consumers will evaluate Portuguese cultivars comparing to foreign cultivars, as you can see, the profile is very similar. We only found significant differences between cultivars in these 3 parameters: skin color, bitter almond flavor, and bitter taste. The skin color was rated high for foreign cultivars because the skin was lighter and more. The consumers found out, said that they're more attractive to them. By the other hand, the bitter almond flavor, the bitter taste in Portuguese cultivars might be considered a low or a negative parameter because it's associated to what we say amêndoa amarga, bitter almond, which no one likes. When we try to do the shelling percentage, if you remember, amendoão, which weighed almost 14 grams, shelling percentage is only 14%, so a very low shelling percentage. CV Glorieta and CV Ferranhês, 2 of the foreign cultivars, have high shelling percentage, but CV Bonita also presents interesting shelling percentages. However, it's a very small fruit, and which will have to be used in specific products. When we compare defective kernels, we found out in this specific year that the study was done, the pegarinhos collected in Mursa presented almost half of the kernels with some problem. This was probably linked to that specific year because we never get so, and on the following years we never did find so many defective kernels in this cultivar. So it was probably linked to the climatic conditions or agricultural practice in that specific orchard. We also studied the shell rupture force, so the force that is needed to break the almond shell without breaking the kernel. You can see the image, how the assay was done. What we did find out is both the foreign cultivars that are used as comparison have a lower rupture force, so we need to provide less energy to break the shell than in Portuguese cultivars, so it will be easier to break them. And also for severe amendoão and severe casanova, we found out that the variation within this cultivar is extremely high. So making an automated shelling process will be difficult, because the shelling process will either be using too much force and will break the kernels, or not enough force and the shell will not be broken and we cannot assess the kernel. So it's a negative characteristic that these fruits present. When we also studied almond processing and roasting and blanching, which are the most common processing methods, we looked at the presence of oleic and linoleic acid, the two major ones, after roasting. What happens is that there are considerable decreases in the presence of these fatty acids. However, it's different when we compare cultivars. For instance, oleic acid increased in Saber Refego, and in average decreased in all cultivars, and the decrease in linoleic acid was not so significant in cultivar Refego. These are positive things that we noticed, because the loss of these compounds, or the loss of this oleic acid, the transformation of these acids in acids that are linked to fatty acid degradation, can be reduced using the oil of these two cultivars. Looking at health lipid indexes, these are usually known and are those that appear in high fat products, are always showed, like MUFA, PUFA, and SFA. So monounsaturated fatty acids, polyunsaturated fatty acids, and saturated fatty acids. Monounsaturated fatty acids are the major ones in almonds and are within the normal range. Polyunsaturated fatty acids are the second major group and are also in what is usual to find in almonds. Saturated fatty acids are usually found in almonds below 10%, and our study shows in general this. The ratio of poly and monounsaturated fatty acids is usually below 1, which indicates that the oils or the fats present in our almonds are stable. And the lowest unsaturated saturated fatty acids shows that the cultivar molar is able to withstand long storage periods, because saturated fatty acids are those that are able to endure storage and processing without losses. If we continue to see what happens after processing, for saturated fatty acids, roasting caused a decrease, besides the increase recorded in Castelo Branco and Glorieta. After blanching, all cultivars showed a decreasing trend in saturated fatty acids, except for Glorieta and Refego. The PUFA-MUFA ratio increased in all cultivars, with the exception of Refego, but only after roasting. The saturated fatty acids increased in 4 of the cultivars and decreased in Casanova and Glorieta. Blanching had different effects. For Refego and Glorieta, the saturated fatty acids ratio decreased, but an increase in Ferragnias molar was found. Processing also affected the total phenolic content. Blanching reduced for 70% the content, and this is because phenolics in almonds are present in the almond skin. If we remove almond skin, we remove almost all the phenolics. On the other hand, roasting increased significantly the content of phenolics, because probably it allows a better extraction when we do this methodology. However, and for blanching, Saber Ferragnias was able to keep some of the phenolics, because they only lost around 16% after blanching. And after roasting, although in average around 900% of increase, Saber Ferragnias only increased 300%. So different behaviors depending on the cultivar. After processing and the sensory analysis, after roasting, no significant differences were recorded among cultivars. But interestingly, after blanching, 2 Portuguese cultivars, Pegarinhos and Refego, showed that the force used to bite needed to bite them and to chew was higher. And this is a positive characteristic, because I think that I'm not saying anything wrong, but everyone loves that the almonds break when we chew. They don't like, I don't think anybody likes chewy chewy almonds, of soft almonds. So this is a very interesting thing that we found out, and especially for these two cultivars, the use of their fruits after blanching might be a good way to valorize them. Finally, aiming at the valorization of byproducts, what we used was the shell of the almonds, and we added the shells to the green bean growth substrate. In the photo above, it's the pods were grown, or the green bean was grown in a mixture of shell and peat. And the photo below, we used the almond shell as a mulch, so 1 centimeter of almond shell above the growth substrate. What we did find out in green bean pods is that independently of what type of assay we did, there was an increase in carotenoid content and an increase on total phenolic content. This is very interesting results. However, and science is not always so good for us, we find out that if we use the mixture of shell and peat, the pods will be smaller. So not so very good results. However, if you use most, the pods were a little bit bigger. So not always positive results. Just to finish and highlighting some key findings, leaf characteristics to reduce water loss are present in some of the Portuguese cultivars, that show that they are adapted to the conditions of Portuguese almond orchards. Sugar content increased in amendoão e vitamina E em saber pegarinhos. Shelling percentage are comparable to foreign cultivars if we looked at saber bonita and saber pegarinhos. High resistance of the lipidic fraction em saberes Casanova e refego. Saberes pegarinho e saber refego have their sensorial characteristics favored by processing, and namely by blanching, which is interesting. And almond shell has some potential to be used as plant growth substrate, but we need to further investigate this specific use. The major conclusion is that our cultivars have potential to be used in almond industry, but they have to be selected and used according to their characteristics. So chemical composition is very important, and their characteristics after processing is also very important, and they should be focused by almond industry. Just to highlight some things. These are the data that was easily available for anyone to read about almond and Portuguese almonds before this project begins. We were able to multiply this by 2, so there are new data regarding our cultivars. Most of this data is published in manuscripts, but some of them are on some technical magazines and are easily available. I invite you all to take a look at this data. And just my acknowledgements for the funding and supervision of the work and to my co-authors. And thank you all for your attention regarding this theme.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ivo, for your work regarding evaluation of Portuguese cultivars. Now that we saw that blanching removes the phenolics, we will all eat almonds with skin, so we will keep the phenolics in the picture. I would like to ask you your results. Do you think that they add value to these almonds? I mean, for instance, I remember that you showed us that vitamin content, at least vitamin E content, it was high. The fatty acids profile, it was interesting. Pergaminos shows a very interesting crunchiness. Are the consumers aware of these differences or not?
As far as I know, they are not. I think that, and I'm going to speak from looking at from my experience, but also because I think if we have a protected denomination of origin, it should be used to boost the production of those cultivars inside the protected denomination of origin. What I know, or what I'm aware of, is that these cultivars are sold in mixture with other cultivars, so there are no separation of cultivars, and there is no how would I say without causing any issues to me, there is not an effort from the protected denomination of origin management to
separate and to sell,
and to increase the marketing or the publicity around these cultivars. If I know, and I have already saw publicity regarding almonds from Alentejo, which is a major producer in Portugal. The major companies are there and they are working well, but Alentejo is Alentejo. There is nothing linked to Alentejo like a protected denomination of origin. And that should be a key point to use for the valorization of these cultivars. The producers, and most of them are small producers that have still these cultivars. They know their cultivars and they know they are good, and those around them know that these cultivars are good.
That's a step
the
forward,
average consumer does not.
Yes, so Ivo, I have a question here from Sylvia. She's asking, well, taking in account all the cultivars that you presented to us and its particular characteristics, which one do you recommend for our regular consumption? Ivo, I think you are muted.
Yeah, I was thinking now. That's there are two questions that I usually run off. Sorry, one is which cultivar to plant, and the other is which cultivar to eat, because that depends a lot. From a producer point of view, they always want to know which is the best one, but it depends on many things, including their soil. From the consumer point of view, there is one thing that I cannot evaluate, which is the personal taste and the personal preferences of each one. I'm a very strong fan of two cultivars. One is Bonita, that although it's a small almond, but for me it was the one that when I taste them, I was not part of the sensorial panel,
sensory panel,
but I eat all of them. It was the one that I liked the most. On the other hand, there is one which it's known as Mular in Portugal. Yes. Where I collected these almonds is Mular because the shell is extremely easy to open. But usually, Mular can be said as those who have a high shelling percentage. It depends on what we are talking about. But the specific ones in which you can break the shell with your hands. It has that specific characteristic, which means that you can buy in shell almonds a little bit. It's cheaper than buying almonds without shell, so you can buy that and take the shell off in your house, so you can spend less money and get the quality product. Okay, and I also like that one. There is a major issue with that one. It's because the shell is easy to break, so birds really like to eat them when they are on the tree. So
we need to reach an equilibrium when finding out what's best to plant and what's the best to consume. I have one last question, but I will take the opportunity to leave it for all the participants, to all the speakers at class. So Claudia Costa, just make sure you stay until the end because you would like to hear the answer. Now, I thank you so much, Ivo, and I'll take this opportunity to welcome Joana Costa. She is a researcher and guest lecturer at the University of Coimbra, and also she is the director and technical manager of the Plant Health Laboratory of the Instituto Pedro Nunes. Joana holds a master in cellular biology and a PhD in biology from the University of Coimbra. She is a researcher at the Center for Functional Ecology and guest assistant professor since 2011 in the Department of Life Sciences at the University of Coimbra, integrating its scientific committee since 2019. She is also the director and scientific coordinator of the Phytosanitary Laboratory of the Instituto Pedro Nunes, and she coordinates several projects, namely the operational group I9 Kiwi and Chill Out, among others, participating in several national and international networks. Today she is here as the executive director of the program CULTIVAR, the network of competencies for sustainable development and innovation in the agri-food sector, bringing together more than 60 researchers from various areas. Joana, thank you so much for staying with us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I would like to start by acknowledging the invitation to be here today and for the opportunity to present the ICDT research program CULTIVAR, named Network for Sustainable Development and Innovation in the Agri-Food Sector. This program is financed by the program Centro 2020, Portugal 2020, and the European Union. CULTIVAR started in the end of December of 2019. It has a consortium of 4 main entities. It is led by the University of Coimbra with 2 centers, research center, the Center for Functional Ecology and CEGOT. And there are 3 other important partners, the EPN, Instituto Pedro Nunes, with 2 of their labs, the Phytolab and the Laboratory for Informatic and Systems, the CATA, Centro de Apoio Tecnológico Agroalimentar, and the Instituto Politécnico de Castelo Branco. From these 4 institutions, we have more than 65 researchers that are involved in this network. 20 of them are hired entirely from the CULTIVAR network. We have a broad scope of skills and competences based on multidisciplinary and innovation research. Our main goals for the CULTIVAR program is to promote the sustainability and innovation in the agri-food sector of the Central region. And for this, we have built this network of competence to develop solutions in these new contexts that are escalating in the recent times and are threatening our agri-food sector and its sustainability and productivity. In this sense, I think the CULTIVAR aims to characterize, conserve, and value endogenous regional genetic research, plant-based resources, in order to contribute to this territorial dynamization and development. We have 3 main specific goals. One of them is to improve and provide Central region existing centers with the qualified human resources in strategic area. So this program has allowed to hire very highly specialized human resources. We also aim to promote and consolidate the collaboration between science, technology, and higher education and the agri-food cluster. I think for the past years it has been a huge improvement in these clusters, in this connection between these clusters, in a perspective based on the inter- and transdisciplinary nature of knowledge and innovation. And the last but not least, to implement a new methodological strategy for research and innovation development based on our holistic vision of agro-ecosystem services and to create some supporting decision tools for the producers. We have 2 main objectives in this scope: to conserve and enhance the endogenous genetic resources, promoting their sustainability and resilience of the agro-ecosystems, and to identify new application and context to the use of plant species and variety, enhancing and promoting the associated value chains. As I mentioned earlier, our approach is quite innovative. We use a replicable methodology that has been applied to the landscape level, and we collect and aggregate multi-layers of information from surveying the endogenous genetic resources and the biotic and bioactive factors that condition them, from the ecosystem service that support them, including also the social cultural component that is really important is in these low density territories. And we are implementing this data in digital and ICT technology platform that will allow mapping, monitoring, and integrating modeling information that we have been collecting. We have 5 major research lines besides the coordination and dissemination. The early one, and that is already accomplished, is the biophysical characterization of the territory and its social and economic and demographic dynamics. And from this data gathered, we were able to identify a list of endogenous natural genetic resources that we want to characterize in our research line number 2. And from this characterization, we choose which kind of valorization we will apply to these natural genetic resources. We can do it like a product valorization, and we are developing new products and identifying new ways to use these genetic resources. And on the other side, we want to evaluate and monitoring the ecosystem services that are relevant to these genetic natural resources, since we want to value the process that they in which they are produced from a holistic point of view. We have several projects that are ongoing. I will just mention some of them. I gathered them from the topics. We have 3 examples of the conservation and characterization of genetic resources: lavandula, asphodelus bento-rainha, and cistus ladanifer. Some of them are not only being characterized and their occurrence is being mapped, but also some of them are also in the process of identifying new products and new ways of using them. We also have some projects related with the ecosystem service involved in the production of some of the most important genetic resources of the Beira Interior region, named prunus. We are having a multifunction approach to this dynamic of the ecosystem service in produce production system, from pollinators, from diseases, from soil, from cultivars. So this is our most transversal project. We have another important project related with wild pollinators, and they are being mapped for the entire Beira Interior region. And we want to understand how these pollinator services are being maintained, and if they can be promoted, and how we can promote them, and if they are enough to support the agri-food sector in the Beira Interior region. Another project that we are really into it, and it's starting now, we are evaluating soil health parameters from microbiome to meso and macrofauna, from physicochemical parameters, from carbon sequestration. So it's a huge project, and we are doing it in the Idenha Nova region, and we are doing it in a gradient of intensification of production systems, from agroforest to highly intense olive production and almond production. So I think this will bring some important results for the decision making regarding the use of water, use of intensification production system. Regarding the socio-economic ecosystem services, we are mapping these cultural service in the Beira Interior region. We are studying the farmer perspective, how important are the ecosystem service for the agricultural landscapes. And we are also trying to understand how local ecological knowledge is important for the sustainability of this agroecological system. Regarding the value of the products, we have three main projects. We have side projects, but these are the three main projects. One of them is devoted to Castanha sativa, chestnut, and this is a really transversal project that is being led by Kata. And we are studying chestnut from the tree to the gut, as the title says. We are characterizing the cultivars, we are characterizing the nutritional content of the chestnut. We are developing new ways to use chestnut, and we are starting now a clinical trial where we are using different formulations of chestnut and try to understand its functional activity at the microbiome level. Regarding quince, Sidonia oblonga, we are also characterizing the genetic diversity of traditional varieties. This is a really, I think, potential cultivar for the region, because it is well established in some areas that for now are not being used. So this can be a way of value some of these areas. And we are acknowledged that the market has a quite, the market wants more quince. So I think it's a good opportunity for the region. And regarding almond, and a little bit focus of following Ivo presentation, we are doing an integrated approach to infer the crosstalks between science and rootstocks, and this rootstock and the science are both from traditional and imported cultivars. Not last but not least, we are developing a methodological tool to study this application of our methodology to the agroecosystem services to the cultivar context, because this is a really heterogeneous, small and large property. So this is really, there are several of these methodological tools in the central of Europe, developed for Central Europe, but when we apply that to Portugal, they are not fitted. So we are doing a tailor-made methodological tool just for the cultivar context, and I think it can be extrapolated to other similar regions in Portugal. All of our data that we have been collecting will be available in our platform, the iCultivar platform. This platform is being developed by the Laboratory for Informatics and System of the Instituto Pedro Nunes. It will be launched in July. We'll do an event. I hope to have you all there. And this will be a repository from all kind of information that we are collecting. It will always have a description and a context about the information, so it will be open and free and easily accessible to all kinds of audiences. It will be geo-referentiated, so we can add multiple layers of information. And it will also add several indicators that are useful when dealing with crops. So I think this will be a really interesting tool for the agri-food system of the Beira Interior. And all of our main results are fully available and open access in our website, eCultivar. And you can find everything that we have been producing. All of our events are available also here, so you can easily go back and see most of our webinars and discussions. And we try to keep a really dynamic feedback in Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, so everyone can see what we are doing and join us in our multiple activities. And finally, I would end by thank you all for your attention, and I'm available for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joana. Thank you for this overview of this project that holds a lot of potential to bring Portuguese cultivars and our patrimony closer to people. While I'm just waiting for some questions to pop by, I take this opportunity to ask you, Joana, if you saw that there is a significant decrease in the habitat for any of these species that you talked about, and if you saw that, if replanting these species in other regions can be a strategy to guarantee that the genetic patrimony is kept safe and alive?
Yeah, that's a really nice question. What we have seen is that there are different factors contributing to the reduction of the area that these endogenous resources are diminishing, mainly the human activity, agricultural activity, but in parallel, a lot of the territory is being abandoned. So a lot of people are leaving the territory. So they are not keeping these areas. So they are being invaded by infested plants. So I think that just restoring these habitats and keeping it clean, as we say, with a strategy, they will, I think, be able to be kept in their local provenance. What we are dealing is, and we are afraid, is that the climate change is affecting some of these areas, and their therefore climatic suitability is changing. So some of them will be in fact endangered here, so it will have to be carefully collected and conserved in bank species and germoplasm banks, and probably thinking outside the interior region if there are other habitats where they can be replanted. Yes, so this is not a yes or no answer, and each resource has a different context, so there's not one size fits all. So we have for each of them, design a specific conservation program. Yes, but you are right.
Thank you so much, Joana. Also, a question from Claudia. She's asking, could you detail the link between soil health and intensification of agriculture, in particular in Idanha region, where there are huge intensive farms and they're rising with no respect for traditional cultivars?
I think that the context in Idanha region is, it depends on what we are talking about, because we have visited several kinds of these intensive and hyper intensive farms, and they are not always all the same. And we have visited some of them that have really sustainable goals, and they want to integrate the society, they employ people, because some of them, they don't, or they need to do it like this, otherwise they will not be able to produce anywhere, because they don't have the human resources to do traditional farming there. So this is some of the people that we met are local people that this was the only way to do it. So I don't think this is, again, one narrative. You have to look carefully for each case, because I think there are really some sustainable cases that can be even more sustainable than traditional farming. Because even for traditional farming, we have really disparity between people that are really careful about applying some kind of phytofarmers and have really careful about water usage. But on the other side, there are people within the irrigation perimeter that do not care about water. So when I was not working in Idanha, I had some kind of approach, but when we go there and we meet producers and we see the context, we have to be really careful about this extrapolation, and that's what we want to measure. So we will measure the health parameter with no dogma, with no preconceived ideas. And after this 2-year study, we will see if indeed this kind of intensification gradient and more or less sustainable practice will have an impact on soil health parameters. And after that, we can have a new discussion and see what is sustainable or not in the region. So yes, I understand the question, but it's not, we don't have yet an answer.
That's good, Joana. At least that leaves us the door open to further meet and discuss these questions that are of interest from both parts. Also, Joana, I would like to ask you something just out of curiosity, because you worked, or at least the iCultivar project worked with Cistus ladanifer, the rock rose, right?
Yep.
Also
Yep.
with quince, chestnuts. What is the endogenous resource plant species that is less, from which you worked, of course, what was less known by the population and needs to be worked to add value to its consumption?
Cistus ladanifer is it's a quite different resource than quince and chestnut. Correct, and the usage is totally different, and the audience and producers are quite distinct. One is really the quince and chestnut have producer associations, have some big markets that want to commercialize them, while Cistus ladanifer is totally different, and the scope is completely distinct. Regarding quince, I think it's the most the culture that has the most margin for progression and innovation, because it's always no one gives and takes spends much time with quince. They are always the side production side product. And it's getting great value, market value. So I think quince is one of them. And there's a lot of new products that can be obtained from quince. So I think it could be a nice option. And even because it is, yes, it is really quite resistant to pests and disease. It is quite resistant to drought. So I think for this region, it can be a new product that can have a margin of progression. Yes.
Yeah, that's very good. One last question, Joana. Sylvia is asking, do you have difficulties finding farmers and producers willing to make changes to more sustainable practices as you work with farmers also?
No, on the opposite. We found that most of the producers want to know, want to do better, want to be protected against the future challenges. So it has been a quite, how I say, it has been a quite nice experience with them, because they are always wanting to do more in the orchards. They want to foster pollination. They want to be protected against pests. So on the opposite, they are really open to new practices and they want to know more about it. From the other side, I think they are more or less alone in terms of common strategy for the region. So I think in terms of sustainability and new ways of doing, and in terms of circular economy, of energy, I think it's missing a strategy for the region so they can all contribute in the same way. So yeah, it is nice to be. It is really nice to work here.
Yeah, with such a diversity of people, it is quite disconcerting to know that there is a need for national policy or decision maker to deal with this kind of issues. Joana, thank you so much. I take the opportunity to move on to our next and last speaker, Mário Cristovão from CATA. Mário holds a bachelor's degree in agronomy and a master in zootechnical engineering. He is a researcher at Agri-Food Technological Center and a research associate of the program CULTIVAR. He is also a coordinator of the pilot units at Agri-Food Technological Center, carrying out the development of new products and new food technologies. And he will bring us today a very interesting topic about the use of thistle in cheese production. So Mário, welcome. And the floor is yours.
You can see?
Yes, we can see.
Can I start it?
Yes, that's all. Thank you.
Em Portugal são produzidos queijos tradicionais, do leite de cabra, coagulados com extratos aquosos de flores secas de carne, que é o Cynara, cardunculus, são ricas em enzimas proteolíticas, que são as cardocinas. A valorização dos produtos tradicionais, recursos endógenos importantes para as respectivas regiões de origem, passa por utilizar matéria-prima e processos que possam garantir a reprodutibilidade na obtenção da qualidade dos queijos produzidos. Neste âmbito, foi implementado um projeto de âmbito nacional envolvendo diversas instituições de ID e associações de produtores, com o objetivo principal de selecionar os ecotypes de carne e os perfis enzimáticos das enzimas coagulantes adequados à produção de um queijo tradicional. Foram realizados ensaios de secagem com o objetivo de estabelecer a temperatura e o tempo ótimo de secagem em função da atividade coagulante e a monitorização da coagulação. A atividade desenvolvida no âmbito do projeto passou também pelo desenvolvimento de uma mistura de flores, obtidas a partir dos diversos ecotypes de carne, a serem utilizados depois no processo de fabrico do queijo. Estes ecótipos de carne foram utilizados em ensaios experimentais, no fabrico de queijo DOP da beira baixa e queijo de Castelo Branco. Os queijos foram depois avaliados relativamente às componentes físico-químicas e análise sensorial.
No fabrico do queijo de Castelo Branco só pode ser utilizado leite cru de ovino, criados e alimentados em explorações agropecuárias na zona de Castelo Branco, sal, carne e água. Tradicionalmente, o leite de ovelha cru é elaborado imediatamente após o ordenho. Assim que este atinge a temperatura ótima de coagulação, entre os 30 a 32 graus, é adicionado o cardo. Ao que se completa a coagulação, aproximadamente 40 minutos, procede-se ao primeiro corte grosseiro, seguido de um pequeno repouso para processar. Procede-se de seguida a sucessivos cortes até que se atinja o tamanho semelhante ao de um grão de arroz. A qualidade é retirada para formas, sendo de seguida trabalhada e prensada até se atingir um ponto ótimo de pressuramento. De seguida, o sal é espalhado pela toda a superfície do queijo. Após o fabrico,
Well, for those who were with us, and Mário was sharing a video regarding the use of thistle flowers in cheese production, but I think Mário will continue just now. So the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sorry for the problems with my computer. It's about me. I now present my presentation is about how Cynara cardunculus ecotypes affect the production of Castelo Branco type cheese. It's a project cheese that wants to evaluate how the Cynara cardunculus affect cheeses. So in Portugal, the dairy consumption is very important, and the cheese is the third most consumed product in here. And worldwide, in 2021, we see that 3.6 million tons are in cheese trade. So you see that cheese is important dairy. To understand how in this country the cheese is important, you can see that we have 11 PDO cheeses. I will talk about the Beira Baixa in my region, that are 3 different types: the Amarelo, Castelo Branco, and Picante. So the Castelo Branco type is the only one that uses the tistle, the Cynara cardunculus. He also only use sheep milk in his production. So why use tistle? Tistle is the endogenous from Portugal. You can see here where you can find it in the wild. And beyond that, the flower have 2 important roles: the clothing ability and the probiotic role. It's both of them important to our health. So in this study, we have 2 trials. The first trial is a comparison of 5 ecotype types. Each ecotype has a different enzymatic profile. Each enzyme that allow the clothing ability have names between A to B, C, D. So in the second trial, we try an ecotype without cardusine A and with cardusine A to see the differences. So in this manufacture, we use 2 sheep breeds, a Sefton Locon, that are breeds adapted to the region in Castelo Branco. To understand how the various ecotypes work, we have used different grams because of enzymatic profile of each type of Cynara cardunculus is different. So the difference between them, that difference make us change the grams that we use in the each production. So in the manufacture, use the two types. The first phase of the cheese production, the first 10 days, the cheese was maintained in the low temperature with 7 degrees and a high humidity rate. And the second phase, between the 10 days and the 42 days, in the 42, we consider the cheese complete. The temperature is a little higher, and the humidity were slowly decreased to the cheese can obtain that yellow color and the crust that Castelo Branco cheese is known for. Here I can show you the parameters of the milk and the differences between the milk and the losses we have in the whey. So the most important parameters here is the protein and the fat, and the difference between the whey types. Here we can see that it's not relevant, because in all the ways the difference is minimal between them in these 2 parameters that are important for the cheese manufacture. We also each 7 days evaluate the color of the cheese. For that, we use a colorimeter and make 14 points of the cheese. We evaluate it, and it allows us to see analytical how the cheese is evolving. In this slide, you can see that between the 0 day and the 42 day, there are differences. And if you can watch carefully, you'll see that in the red one, the 3M are a little higher between them. And you can see that in the real photo here, where the 3M between the left, the 0 day, and the right, the 42 day, you can see that the 3M is the one where the yellow, sorry, something's wrong, sorry. The 3M is the one that the yellow is more strong compared to the other cheeses. We also evaluate the texture of the cheese, and in this we use a probe that prefers the cheese to allow us to see the firmness of the crust in the left and the flush on the right. And in these types, we can see that the 5M is the one that is softer, because in this scale, you have the strength that the probe needs to do to prefer the cheese. So you have the softer 5M here, but in the physical chemical parameters, the protein and the fat, you can see no difference between them. But this changes when you go to the sensorial analysis. In here, we have a panel that tries the cheeses and classify them for smell, flavor, or scent. And they're like the case of the texture, the 5M are softer, but here he has the best smell, flavor, and scent of them all. So you can see that he wins this round. In the second tryout, we have another parameters of protein and fat, and the difference of the whey in the cardozine and no cardozine. In here, you can see that the milk protein and fat, it's a little lower. That's because it's a different type of the year, and the feed that the sheep eat, it's different, and that results in a different type of milk. But in here, you can see the evaluation of the color. In this case, you can see no difference between them. And in the real photo, you can see that no cardozine and cardozine will not affect the color, which is expectable in this trial. What is expected is the texture. And we can see that in the left, we have a softer cheese, but in the crust and the flesh of the right, who has a harder cheese. So we will expect no differences also here in the parameters of protein and fat. But when we go to the sensory analysis, we can see that it's a little higher in smell, flavor, and scent, the cheese with cardozine hay compared to no cardozine. So finally, I want to address to you that this type of assays will allow us to explore different types of cardozines, will affect the final cheese product, and find solutions to improve overall quality of traditional food products. It's also what I show you today. It's one test we are doing. We are also in current. This week we made new cheeses with new types of cardozines to know how they react, and will allow us to understand better this amazing flour that we have in Portugal. Thank you, and sorry for all the technical problems.
Thank you so much, Mario, and thank you so much for the opportunity to get to know a little bit better about your work. I would like you to just clarify something that, at least to me, it was not very clear. You did part of your experimentation involved testing cardozine and no cardozine, right?
Yeah. It's a tistle with the profile of that. The tistle was the Cynara cardunculus, no cardozine hay, and another one as present, that enzyme.
Oh, okay. I was asking because usually we link the use of thistle due to the presence of this enzymatic content. You know, yeah. This is why I was asking. And
but they have another cardozine. It's cardozine B, C, D, A, F. It's in the beginning they only found 2 of them, but in the evolution of science they can find a number of cardozines that are different, and we are trying to see what is the differences. And when they do the profile of that flour, they do clones of them, so it'll be the same, and we use them to understand. It's the project is a part of this. Yeah.
Yes, of course. I'll take this opportunity to share with you a question from Luis. He's asking, what is your opinion about the importance to perform a genotypic analysis of thistle used, and of course, their influence in flavor or texture?
I think this trial is only one of them. It's a small trial now, but I think the flavor will be very different because we do someone a year ago maybe we do with the concentration of distillate it's higher, so the cheese the flavor was not so good because the coagulation time was great, but the flavor was off. It's too bitter. So the cardo has definitely a relation between the cheese because it can get bitter. If you try cardo raw, you will take that flavor. And the second question, sorry, flavor and what?
Yes, in this case it was flavor and texture. Luis was asking the
texture. We are seeing that the carnosines tip the A and the B will get the buttery or not buttery of the milk of the cheese. We are trying to see what is perfect to Serra da Estrela and what is perfect to Castelo Branco.
Oh, okay, because they have different.
They have different, yeah.
Texture, different
to
firmness.
See how buttery
Levels.
the cheese gets, and okay, that is right for you, and that is right for me, and that will go a perfect cardo, a tistel in this case. Sorry.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And Mario, just out of curiosity, you used the Cynara cardunculus, the thistle. You used the flowers, the dried flowers.
The dried flowers. The purple, only the purple of the flower, crushed. You need to be crushed because the enzymes are inside.
Okay.
People often make this mistake. Producers also make this mistake sometimes. They put it gets so bitter the cheese because of the quantity of thistle that they put to coagulate. When you only have to crush it and like 30 minutes in the water to rehydrate it, and it's fine to use.
Yes, that's good. Mario, one last question. Claudia is asking, what do these results mean for the consumers? Adding thistle makes cheese more tastier, and does the kerosene allow for cheaper manufacturing costs? What are the benefits other than using a natural local resource? Well, in this case, I think they are using cardo as a natural resource, right?
Yeah. Cardo is a natural resource because the other option it's enzyme from the gut of the animals, and cardo is you can see
natural
because
flower, widespread.
The properties for the gut in the cardo are good. I can say I can say that I have to study more about that, but they have properties that pass to the cheese and that pass to consumer. In terms of the benefits for the consumer, that will be that you're going to have a cheese more constant. You know that when you buy a cheese, maybe some are good, some are bad, and if you establish the production with this type of studies, you can have maintain the quality of the cheese and the cheese with that qualities that the producer want, and you know, okay, that producer have always that cheese with that buttery or that hardener that I like. This is the benefit. It's the the standardization of the cheese production.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you so much for your intervention, Mario. Before I give you a last question to all our speakers, I have one last question to Joana. Henrique was asking, is the advisory forum closed to other institutions willing to collaborate with Cultivar?
Yes, we are always collecting new institutions. It is really not up to date. Because depending on the projects, we need we have a formal contract that we assigned with the participation institution, and we are doing that for the Danha Nova region, for example. So depending on the kind of collaboration, of course, we are always welcoming new institution and participation, of course, yes.
Thank you so much for your kind answer, Joana. Now, to all of you, I would like to ask you, what advice would you give to reverse the current situation? I mean, to make the Portuguese cultivars a strength for the Portuguese territory and the different regions. Do you think, or better, who do you think should take the ownership of preserving these native cultivars, the Portuguese cultivars? Governments, public authorities? Mário, Ivo, Joana, just a couple of words.
I think that's the 1 million question. I think I'm always in favor of what is crucial should be available to all. So I think it should be strategic for public institutions to do it. But it has not been the case, and it's a really weak point. And when we go abroad and we see all the other cultural collection in other countries, I have sometimes I want to cry. But nevertheless, I think that the problem is the maintenance of these collections is a long-term investment, and we are not being able to guarantee these fundings. So, or it is national interest and strategy and invest in that, as it has been in IAV, and there are a lot of other collection and repository of agro cultivars, not silvestre, but agro cultivars. And so in some cases, like in Italy or even in America and Costa Rica, the private sector, and not New Zealand, the private sector is taking the lead on this subject. The problem is that we have otherwise to pay it. So it's almost as I consider it a public service, so it should be public and it should be financed by. That's my belief, but I have nothing against private companies that want to do it.
Absolutely, Joana. Thank you so much for sharing your opinion on this.
I think also I agree with Joana, because I think will be public, not maybe the government alive with public, but always public, because the government does not have the contacts that some people have in the field. Portugal is not a big country, but sometimes looks like a big country.
This lack of communication or
or the lack of understanding of the countryside people live. I think it's a big difference, and to understand only public who have contact with these producers, who listen to their problems and to see what results in the field, and not what it's good to show, because it's cool to see that some fruits are healthy, but they are not sustainable to do in Portugal, and understand a little better about our footprint. Sometimes it's better to eat a banana from Colombia than abacate from Alqueva, and it's to understand that and to talk to people that know that and to educate the people about that. It's so hard to say to people, okay, it's healthier, but it's not good. It's not good, and I think it's public. Public have to crush it down.
Yeah, the public institutions and you, Ivo, where do you think the efforts belong?
I agree with them. I think the public sector needs to take a hold of this. I think it has to start locally, because no one better than local producers know what they have available. We can be talking about almond cultivars, thistle, ecotypes, whatever. They know what's there. But it has to start there. Collect, start germoplasm banks, start culture collections, and from there study, characterize. For instance, my work was only focused on characterization, so that the knowledge was out producers or other researchers, they have to pick up my data and continue the work, because none of us can from our situation start working on the field and take it to all the levels that it should go. The knowledge needs to go from one to another, and I think that should start locally. And talking specifically about almond, it's very difficult sometimes to have the producers, traditional producers, to come together and draw a strategy. If we talk about big producers and high investment, it's easier, because they know that they need to get some money from what they are investing. For small producers, sometimes it's not that easy, and ways of thinking sometimes are not easy to change.
Yes, absolutely. Ivo, thank you so much for your intervention. Dear audience, as you can see, each region has a natural heritage made up of a vast set of underexploited resources. However, it's up to us to value them and work with farmers to guarantee that they do not abandon this genetic and nutritional heritage. So it is imperative to carry out sustainable development of endogenous resources. Well, if there are no more questions, I thank you all for being here today. And of course, my deepest thanks to all the speakers for their priceless contributions today and for running an excellent event. Next week, we will take a break from the webinars, and we will be back next month on the 2nd of June to start the cycle on digital tools for sustainable farming. See you then. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Obrigada, boa tarde.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.